Listen closely, for I am about to tell you of a choice that shattered destiny itself. In a galaxy far, far away, there exists a timeline where the stars themselves sing a different song, where the Force flows untainted by shadow, and where the name Skywalker is whispered not in fear, but in reverence across 1,000 worlds. What if I told you that in one crucial moment, when all hope seemed lost and darkness pressed against the very heart of the Republic, a young Jedi stood at the crossroads of eternity and chose light over shadow, trust over control, love over fear? What if the Chosen One did not fall, but rose to become the beacon the galaxy desperately needed? Before you settle in tonight, take a moment to like this video and join our community of dreamers by subscribing. In the comments below, tell me where you are listening from tonight and what time it is in your part of the world. There is something magical about knowing that across the globe, souls are gathering to explore these infinite possibilities together. Now dim those lights and find your most comfortable position. Let the weight of today melt away as we journey to a reality where hope conquered despair, where the greatest love story in galactic history was not destroyed by prophecy, but fulfilled through wisdom. Pull your blanket close and prepare to witness a legend that even the ancient Jedi chroniclers dared not imagine. I am your guide through this alternative tapestry of fate, where one moment of perfect clarity changed the destiny of countless worlds. Tonight, we explore the timeline where Anakin Skywalker looked into the face of ultimate temptation and spoke the words that would echo through eternity. Picture, if you will, the Chancellor's office high above Coruscant as the sun sets on what should have been the Republic's final day. The air itself trembles with the weight of choices unmade. Two figures stand in that room, one offering power through darkness, the other holding the fate of every living soul in his trembling hands. But in this reality, when Palpatine reveals his true nature and promises to save the one person Anakin loves more than life itself, something extraordinary happens. The young Jedi, racked with visions of loss and consumed by fear, feels a sudden stillness wash over him like warm starlight. The Force, pure and undiluted, speaks to him with crystalline clarity. What Palpatine does not expect, what even the Jedi Council could never have foreseen, is the moment when Anakin Skywalker looks into those yellow eyes, offering salvation through damnation, and speaks words that will reshape the very fabric of reality. But that moment, that choice, and the incredible cascade of light that follows, that is where our true journey begins. For you see, dear listener, what happened next would transform not just one young man's destiny, but birth a golden age that would span generations. A single word, spoken in defiance of fear itself, would prevent the rise of an empire and instead kindle the dawn of an era where love truly could conquer all. But first, let me take you to that office, to that moment when the galaxy held its breath, and show you how one Jedi's greatest test became his most magnificent triumph. The setting sun cast long shadows across Chancellor Palpatine's office as Anakin stood frozen, lightsaber drawn, the weight of impossible choices crushing down upon him. In the original timeline, fear would win this battle. But here, in this moment of ultimate test, something different stirred within the young Jedi's heart. "I can save Padme," Palpatine whispered, his yellow eyes gleaming with dark promise. "Only through the power of the dark side can you prevent the visions you have seen. She will die without my knowledge." The words hung in the air like poison, seeping into every crack of Anakin's desperate soul. He had seen it so clearly in his dreams, night after night. Padme dying in childbirth, calling his name, slipping away despite all his power. The same visions that had haunted him about his mother, the same helplessness that had driven him to slaughter an entire village of Tusken raiders. But instead of the familiar surge of desperation and rage, Anakin felt something extraordinary wash over him. A sudden, profound clarity descended like warm starlight touching his spirit. The Force itself, not the twisted echoes Palpatine had been feeding him through their conversations, but the true Force, spoke with crystalline certainty. He remembered Qui-Gon's words about the living Force, about trusting in its will rather than forcing outcomes. He remembered Padme's gentle wisdom about letting go of fear. Most powerfully, he remembered the love that had sustained him through every trial, not the possessive hunger that consumed him in dark moments, but the pure light that had first drawn him to her. "No," Anakin said, his voice steady for the first time in months. The lightsaber in his hand hummed with renewed purpose. "I won't trade the galaxy's freedom for my fear. The Force will guide Padme's fate and mine. I choose to trust in the light." The first time in decades, Palpatine felt genuine shock ripple through the carefully constructed web of his plans. This wasn't the broken, desperate young man he had been molding through years of patient manipulation. The Chosen One stood before him in full radiance, and the Sith Lord realized with dawning horror that his greatest manipulation had failed. "You fool," Palpatine hissed, his kindly Chancellor facade melting away like ice in sunlight. "She will die and you will have nothing. No power to save her, no strength to change fate itself." "Then I will love her memory," Anakin replied, raising his lightsaber between them. "And I will serve the living Force that connects us all. Master Windu was right. You're under arrest, my lord." As Anakin made his choice, something shifted in the Force itself. Across the galaxy, sensitive beings felt it like the first warm breeze of spring after a harsh winter. On distant worlds, creatures lifted their heads as if hearing distant music. In the Jedi temple below, masters paused in their meditations as waves of pure light rippled through the living Force. The very air in the office seemed to lighten as if a suffocating blanket had been lifted from the galaxy itself. Colors appeared more vivid, shadows less oppressive. Even the setting sun outside seemed to burn with renewed hope rather than dying light. Within moments, Mace Windu burst through the office doors, but instead of finding betrayal and darkness, he discovered Anakin standing resolute, keeping the revealed Sith Lord at bay with unwavering determination. "Master Windu," Anakin called out, never taking his eyes off Palpatine's now openly malevolent face. "I know what I must do now. I know who I truly am." The ancient Sith Lord, cornered at last, unleashed his fury in crackling arcs of Force lightning. But Anakin, centered in the light side as never before, deflected the attack with fluid grace. This wasn't the aggressive combat of his earlier years, driven by anger and fear. This was something new, a perfect harmony between warrior and guardian, between power and wisdom. "The Chosen One," Windu breathed, feeling the profound shift in the Force as clearly as if the temple itself had suddenly begun to sing. "You finally found your balance." As more Jedi Masters arrived to secure the captured Sith Lord, Anakin felt a peace he had never known. The crushing weight of his visions, the constant anxiety about losing those he loved, the anger that had burned in his heart since childhood, all of it transformed into something beautiful. Not gone, but alchemized by his choice into compassion, wisdom, and unshakable faith in the Force's will. In that moment, across Coruscant in the medical center, something miraculous occurred. Padme, who had been experiencing troubling symptoms and dark dreams, suddenly felt a wave of profound calm wash over her. The mysterious illness that had been draining her strength began to recede like shadows before dawn. The healers monitoring her vital signs watched in amazement as her reading stabilized and strengthened. The dark visions that had been poisoning both their dreams simply evaporated, revealed now as Sith manipulations rather than inevitable prophecy. Love, it seemed, when guided by wisdom rather than fear, truly could conquer all. But this was only the beginning. Anakin's choice in that office would create ripples that would touch every corner of the galaxy, transforming not just his own destiny, but the fate of countless worlds. The golden age that was about to dawn would be built on the foundation of one young man's decision to trust in light rather than grasp at shadows. What happened next would reshape the very meaning of what it meant to be the chosen one. Word spread through the Jedi Temple like wildfire that night. Anakin Skywalker had not only resisted the dark side's ultimate temptation, but had helped capture the most dangerous Sith Lord in a millennium. The young Jedi who had been struggling with anger and fear had found his center in the moment it mattered. Most Obi-Wan Kenobi arrived at the temple to find his former Padawan in deep meditation, more at peace than he had seen him in years. The familiar lines of tension that had creased Anakin's face for months were gone, replaced by an expression of profound serenity. "I felt it," Obi-Wan said quietly, settling beside his former apprentice in the meditation garden. "Across the entire galaxy, I felt the moment you chose the light, the Force itself seemed to sing." Anakin opened his eyes, and Obi-Wan was startled by what he saw there. Gone was the restless energy, the barely contained anger that had worried him for so long. In its place was a depth of wisdom that seemed to have aged his former Padawan years in a single evening. "I almost lost everything," Anakin replied, his voice carrying a new quality of calm certainty. "But in that moment, I realized that trying to control the Force was what was causing my pain. When I let go of my fear, everything became clear." Meanwhile, in the medical center, Padme's condition had mysteriously stabilized. The healers could not explain it, but her vital signs had improved dramatically the moment Palpatine was captured. The dark visions that had been plaguing both her and Anakin seemed to dissipate like morning mist, leaving her feeling stronger and more hopeful than she had in months. When she was finally allowed visitors, Padme found Anakin transformed. The desperate possessiveness that had frightened her in recent weeks was gone, replaced by the gentle strength she had first fallen in love with. When he took her hand, she felt only peace radiating from him. "The visions," she whispered. "They're gone." "They were never real," Anakin said softly. "Palpatine was feeding them to me, using my fear against us both. But fear has no power over love when love is guided by wisdom." The implications of Palpatine's deception rippled outward like stones thrown into still water. Across Coruscant, clone troopers who had been about to receive Order 66 stood down as their inhibitor chips suddenly seemed less compelling. Without the Sith Lord's direct influence, many began questioning the orders they had been prepared to follow blindly. Captain Rex found himself in Anakin's quarters later that night, struggling with confused memories and conflicting impulses that no longer seemed to matter. His usually clear thoughts felt muddled, as if he had been walking through fog that was finally lifting. "General," he said, his voice puzzled and concerned. "I keep feeling like I was supposed to do something important tonight, but I can't remember. What? All I know is that I'm glad you're safe." Anakin placed a gentle hand on his loyal captain's shoulder, sensing the confusion and conflict in his friend's mind. "We're all safe now, Rex. The war is finally over." The Jedi Council convened in emergency session as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Separatist leadership, revealed to have been under Palpatine's control all along, was already sending peace overtures. Without their secret master pulling the strings, the artificial conflict that had torn the galaxy apart for years was rapidly collapsing. Master Yoda approached Anakin in the early hours of the morning, tears glistening in his ancient eyes. The small Jedi Master moved with a lightness of step that had been absent for years, as if a great burden had been lifted from his shoulders. "Fulfilled your destiny, you have," Yoda said, his voice thick with emotion. "The Chosen One revealed at last. Not through destruction, but through the hardest choice of all, to trust in the Force completely." For the first time in his life, Anakin felt the complete acceptance of the Jedi Council. Master Windu himself, who had long viewed the young Jedi with suspicion and concern, stepped forward with an expression of profound respect. "Anakin Skywalker," Windu said formally, "by the authority of this council, and in recognition of your wisdom in our darkest hour, we grant you the rank of Master. Not for your power, but for your wisdom. Not for your strength, but for your choice to serve, rather than to rule." The words that had once meant everything to him now felt like a natural recognition of growth that had already occurred within his heart. Anakin bowed his head humbly, understanding that true mastery was not about recognition or rank, but about the ability to choose love over fear in every moment. As dawn broke over Coruscant, the city itself seemed to breathe more easily. The oppressive atmosphere that had hung over the capital for years was lifting, replaced by something that had been absent for far too long. Hope was returning to the galaxy, carried on the wings of one young man's decision to trust in the light. In the depths of the temple, ancient Jedi artifacts that had been dormant for generations began to glow softly, responding to the shift in the Force. Holocrons that had remained silent for centuries flickered to life, as if the wisdom of long-dead Jedi Masters was stirring in response to this moment of triumph. The choice Anakin had made would echo through time, touching lives across the galaxy in ways he could not yet imagine. But already the first ripples of that decision were spreading outward, carrying with them the promise of healing, redemption, and a future where love truly could conquer all. The Golden Age was about to begin, built on the foundation of one moment, of perfect trust in the Force. With Palpatine's capture, the Clone Wars ended abruptly, but Anakin's true journey was just beginning. No longer struggling against the dark side, he threw himself into understanding what it truly meant to be the Chosen One. Not a destroyer, as the Sith had whispered, but a healer and teacher who could bring balance through wisdom rather than power. Master Yoda took personal interest in Anakin's continued growth, recognizing that the young man's trials had given him unique insight into the struggle between light and darkness. In the temple's meditation gardens, they spent hours in quiet contemplation, exploring depths of the Force that few Jedi ever experienced. "Powerful you have always been," Yoda said during one of their sessions, his ancient voice carrying centuries of wisdom. "But wisdom, harder to achieve than power, it is. Trust in the Force completely, you must learn." Under Yoda's guidance, Anakin discovered abilities he had never imagined. Not just the power to influence midi-chlorians, but to heal wounded spirits, to calm storms both literal and metaphorical, to bring harmony to chaotic systems through presence alone. His connection to the living force deepened until he could sense the needs of entire ecosystems, understanding how every creature and plant contributed to the greater balance. With the war over, Anakin studied with every available master. From Ki-Adi-Mundi he learned the patience of deep contemplation. From Plo Koon he absorbed lessons in compassion that extended beyond personal attachments. From Luminara Unduli he discovered the serenity that came from accepting the natural flow of life and death. Each teacher helped him understand a different aspect of what it meant to bring balance to the Force. He learned that true balance was not the absence of emotion, but the transformation of emotion into wisdom. Love became compassion for all beings. Anger transformed into righteous determination to protect the innocent. Fear evolved into healthy caution that preserved life rather than controlled it. In the deepest archives of the temple, Anakin discovered texts about the Chosen One that had been sealed for centuries. These ancient writings spoke not of destruction, but of harmony. They described someone who could bridge the gap between all living things and the Force itself, becoming a conduit through which the galaxy could heal from millennia of conflict and division. His meditation sessions became legendary among the Jedi. Other masters would often join him, finding that his presence somehow made their own connection to the Force deeper and clearer. The peace that radiated from him during these sessions was so profound that it could be felt throughout the temple, calming even the most restless younglings and bringing clarity to the most troubled knights. Ancient Jedi holocrons that had been silent for generations began responding to Anakin's presence. Jedi masters from centuries past offered him wisdom about balance and the true nature of the Force that no living Jedi possessed. From these ethereal teachers, he learned techniques for healing not just individuals, but entire cultures traumatized by war and oppression. His lightsaber combat evolved beyond mere technique into pure artistry. No longer fighting from anger or aggression, his movements became a meditation in motion so fluid and peaceful that opponents often found themselves disarmed not through force, but through the sheer beauty and harmony of his technique. His blade work embodied the very principles he was learning about balance, strength flowing from serenity rather than passion. Younglings flocked to Anakin's classes, sensing the deep peace that now radiated from him like warmth from a gentle fire. He taught them not just about the Force, but about making difficult choices, about trusting in something greater than themselves, about finding strength in apparent surrender. The Force doesn't belong to us, he would tell his young students, as they sat in circles on the temple's sun-warmed stones. We belong to the Force. When we try to use it for our own desires, we create imbalance. When we allow it to flow through us in service to all life, we become instruments of harmony. His teaching methods were revolutionary. Instead of the traditional emphasis on emotional detachment, Anakin taught his students to acknowledge their feelings fully, then transform them through understanding and compassion. He showed them that love, when freed from possessiveness and fear, was the most powerful connection to the Force imaginable. Word of his transformation spread throughout the galaxy. Beings who had lost faith during the dark years of war began to hope again. Stories circulated of a Jedi who could heal the deepest wounds, who could bring peace to the most bitter conflicts simply through his presence and wisdom. On Ryloth, Anakin spent weeks working with Twi'lek communities traumatized by years of separatist occupation. He didn't use his lightsaber or force powers to solve their problems. Instead, he listened, mediated disputes, and helped them rediscover their own capacity for healing and cooperation. The former slave boy from Tatooine had particular success working with oppressed populations throughout the Outer Rim. His own experience of powerlessness gave him deep empathy for their struggles, while his mastery of the Force provided practical solutions to seemingly impossible problems. Ancient meditation techniques that had been lost for millennia began flowing through Anakin during his deepest trances. He learned to extend his consciousness across vast distances, bringing comfort to isolated Jedi throughout the galaxy, and even reaching out to touch the spirits of those still trapped in darkness, offering them glimpses of the light they had forgotten. The young man, who had once been consumed by nightmares, now spent his evenings in peaceful contemplation, often joined by Padme as she recovered her strength. Together they would sit in the temple gardens, feeling the life force flowing through every plant and creature around them, understanding at last that their love was not separate from the Force, but a perfect expression of it. This was only the beginning of Anakin's growth as the true chosen one, but already the galaxy was beginning to transform in response to his presence and example. With the threat of the dark side lifted from Anakin's shoulders, his relationship with Padme transformed into something even more beautiful than before. No longer clouded by fear and possessiveness, their love became a source of strength that radiated outward, touching everyone around them with its purity and wisdom. For the first time since their secret wedding, they could be honest about their marriage with the Jedi Council. When Anakin approached the Masters to reveal the truth, expecting judgment or punishment, he found instead understanding and acceptance that surprised him. Master Yoda's response became the stuff of legend throughout the temple. "Changed, the old ways must be," the ancient Jedi said, his eyes twinkling with newfound hope. "A new generation of Jedi, needed it is. Love, when guided by wisdom rather than fear, the strongest connection to the Force it can be." The Council voted unanimously to allow married Jedi, recognizing that Anakin's love for Padme had ultimately saved him and the galaxy. Their relationship became a model for how attachment could coexist with Jedi principles when balanced with wisdom and selflessness rather than possessiveness and control. When Luke and Leia were born months later, they entered a galaxy at peace. Their father wasn't a fallen Jedi lost to darkness, but the greatest master of his generation. Their births were celebrated throughout the temple, with even the most traditional masters smiling as they held the next generation of Force-sensitive children. The twins seemed to glow with an inner light from their earliest days, as if the harmony their parents had achieved was already flowing through their tiny beings. Padme would often find Anakin in the nursery, not just watching over them, but communing with them through the Force, sharing glimpses of the beautiful galaxy they would inherit. Obi-Wan found himself transformed by witnessing his former Padawan's growth. No longer burdened by the need to save Anakin from darkness, he discovered new depths within himself. Their relationship evolved from the traditional Master-Padawan dynamic into something unprecedented, a perfect partnership in service to the Force that inspired other teacher-student pairs throughout the galaxy. "You've become everything I hoped you could be," Obi-Wan told Anakin one evening as they walked through the temple gardens, "and more than I ever dared to dream." The bond between them deepened into something beyond friendship or brotherhood, becoming a living example of how two Force-sensitive beings could support each other's growth without competition or jealousy. Their collaborative teaching methods revolutionized Jedi education throughout the core worlds. When news of Anakin's triumph over the dark side reached Ahsoka in the Outer Rim, she returned to the Jedi Order with tears of joy streaming down her face. Her reunion with her former master healed wounds in both their hearts that had festered since her departure from the Order. "I always knew who you really were, Sky Guy," she said, embracing him with the fierce affection of a sister welcoming
home a long-lost brother. I'm so proud you found your way back to yourself.
Ahsoka became instrumental in helping Anakin develop new training methods for young Jedi, bringing her unique perspective as someone who had walked away from the Order and returned by choice. Together, they created programs that honored both tradition and innovation, showing younglings that there were many paths to serving the Force. The clone troopers, freed from their inhibitor chips and the compulsion to follow Order 66, found new purpose working alongside their former Jedi commanders. Rex and the 501st became Anakin's partners in healing rather than warfare, using their tactical expertise to coordinate relief efforts on war-torn worlds. "General," Rex said during one of their missions to rebuild a devastated Outer Rim settlement, "I never thought I'd say this, but I prefer construction to destruction. There's something deeply satisfying about building homes instead of taking them away." The clones' military precision proved invaluable in organizing massive humanitarian efforts. Their brotherhood, forged in battle, now served to bind communities together in peace. Many chose to start families of their own, finally free to live. As individuals rather than mere soldiers, Anakin formed unexpected friendships throughout the galaxy as former enemies sought him out, drawn by stories of his transformation. Count Dooku, captured rather than killed when the separatist leadership surrendered, spent long hours in philosophical discussions with the young man who had chosen light over darkness. Even from his cell in the Republic Detention Center, Dooku found himself moved by Anakin's compassion and wisdom. "You have achieved what I thought impossible," the former Sith admitted during one of their conversations. "You have found power in surrender, strength in service." These exchanges began Dooku's own journey toward redemption, as Anakin's example showed him that it was never too late to choose a different path. Their conversations, recorded by Republic archivists, would later become foundational texts for understanding how beings could return from the dark side. Several young Jedi requested to train under Anakin, drawn by his unique understanding of temptation and redemption. His first official Padawan was a former dark side adept who had been captured during the war, someone who needed a master who truly understood the struggle between light and darkness. Under Anakin's guidance, this young woman learned to transform her anger into compassion, her pain into wisdom. Their training sessions in the temple courtyards drew crowds of observers, as other Jedi marveled at seeing someone so recently touched by darkness flowering into a beacon of hope. Padmé's work in the Senate flourished with Anakin's support, but it was a different kind of support than before. Instead of trying to control outcomes or protect her from all difficulties, he learned to trust in her strength while offering his presence as a source of peace when she faced challenging negotiations. Together, they became the galaxy's most effective diplomatic team, with Padmé's political acumen combined with Anakin's ability to sense the true needs and fears of all parties involved. Conflicts that had seemed impossible to resolve melted away when approached with their combination of wisdom and love. The transformation of one young Jedi's heart began to reshape the political landscape of the entire galaxy, with Palpatine's Sith conspiracy exposed and the Clone Wars revealed as an elaborate manipulation. The Galactic Senate underwent the most comprehensive reforms in its 1,000-year history. Padmé Amidala led the charge to create a more democratic and transparent government, her efforts now supported not by fear of war, but by hope for lasting peace. Senators who had been corrupted by Palpatine's influence found themselves inspired by her vision of a republic that truly served all beings, not just the wealthy core worlds. The separatist movement, stripped of its Sith manipulation, quickly negotiated peace treaties that addressed the legitimate grievances that had sparked the conflict. Worlds that had felt oppressed by Republic policies found new voice in a reformed Senate, where representation was based on actual need rather than economic power. Anakin served as a unique mediator between the political and Jedi sectors, his wisdom helping bridge gaps that had existed for generations. His ability to sense the true motivations and fears of political leaders made him invaluable in crafting solutions that honored everyone's deepest needs. On Ryloth, his presence helped heal not just the physical damage from years of occupation, but the deeper wounds of cultural suppression and exploitation. The Twi'lek people, who had suffered under both separatist and Republic forces during the war, found in Anakin someone who truly understood their pain and could help them reclaim their dignity. His work there became a model for planetary healing throughout the galaxy. Rather than imposing solutions from above, Anakin would spend weeks listening to local communities, understanding their unique challenges and helping them discover their own capacity for renewal and growth. The clone integration program that Anakin championed became one of the New Republic's greatest successes. These men who had been created as weapons discovered they had the right to choose their own destinies. Many remained in service as peacekeepers and emergency responders, while others pursued civilian careers as teachers, farmers, artisans, and healers. Captain Rex became a senator representing clone interests, his natural leadership and deep understanding of duty making him a powerful voice for veteran affairs and humanitarian causes. His speeches in the Senate chambers often moved, hardened politicians to tears as he spoke of brothers lost to war and the hope of building a galaxy worthy of their sacrifice. The economic transformation that followed was unprecedented in galactic history. Resources no longer drained by endless warfare began flowing toward reconstruction, education, and exploration. The shipyards of Quat Drive Yards, once focused on producing star destroyers, retooled to build hospital ships and mobile schools that brought healing and knowledge to the furthest reaches of space. Trade routes that had been disrupted by war reopened, but now they carried not just goods, but cultural exchanges between species that had been separated by conflict. Corellian engineers worked alongside Mon Calamari shipbuilders to design vessels capable of terraforming dead worlds. Wookiee crafters shared their woodworking secrets with Ewok artisans, creating new forms of art that celebrated the diversity of galactic life. Anakin's influence extended beyond politics into the realm of scientific advancement. Working with researchers across the galaxy, he helped develop new applications for Force-enhanced technology that served life rather than destroyed it. Medical devices that could heal previously incurable diseases, agricultural systems that could make desert worlds bloom, and environmental restoration techniques that could cleanse poisoned atmospheres. The Jedi temples that were established on dozens of worlds served not as military outposts, but as centers of learning and community healing. Each temple was designed to honor local traditions while sharing the universal principles of the Force, creating a network of wisdom that connected every corner of the galaxy. On Naboo, a temple was built near the lake where Anakin and Padme had first declared their love, its architecture blending Gungan engineering with human artistry in a celebration of unity and cooperation. The temple's meditation gardens became a pilgrimage site for couples seeking to understand how love could serve the greater good. Cultural renaissance flourished as beings no longer lived in fear of war or oppression. The grand opera houses of Coruscant featured Wookiee symphonies alongside Twi'lek dance performances and Hutt percussion ensembles. Art became a universal language that transcended species barriers, with collaborative works celebrating the interconnectedness of all life. Anakin himself became a patron of these arts, recognizing that beauty and creativity were essential expressions of the Force's light side. He would often attend concerts and art exhibitions with Padme and their children, showing the galaxy that Jedi were not separate from the communities they served, but integral parts of the living tapestry of galactic civilization. The transformation of diplomatic relations across the galaxy reflected Anakin's approach to conflict resolution. Instead of meeting aggression with force, the new generation of leaders sought to understand the root causes of conflict and address them with wisdom and compassion. Former enemies found common ground in shared projects of reconstruction and exploration. Mandalorian warriors worked alongside Republic engineers to build new settlements on frontier worlds. Imperial sympathizers who had genuinely believed in order and stability found ways to contribute to peace through service rather than domination. Religious and philosophical traditions that had been suppressed or forgotten during the war years experienced a revival. The Jedi Council established dialogue with Force-sensitive traditions from across the galaxy, learning that the light side manifested differently in different cultures, but always served the same fundamental purpose of connecting beings to each other and to the living energy of creation. The ripple effects of Anakin's choice continued to spread outward, touching lives in ways both profound and subtle. Children who had grown up knowing only war began to imagine futures filled with exploration, creativity and service. The galaxy itself seemed to breathe more easily, as if a great weight had been lifted from the shoulders of every living being. This was the beginning of a golden age, built not on conquest or control, but on the simple recognition that love, guided by wisdom, truly could heal any wound and bridge any divide. Even in this transformed galaxy, new challenges began to emerge as the Golden Age matured. Not every being welcomed the sweeping changes that Anakin's choice had brought about, and some problems arose that could not be solved simply through compassion and understanding alone. Deep in the corporate sector, powerful trade barons who had profited from the war's chaos began organizing resistance to the new democratic reforms. These beings had built vast fortunes on the suffering of others and saw the emerging age of cooperation as a threat to their accumulated power and influence. Unlike the clear moral boundaries of the Sith conspiracy, these challenges required nuanced responses that tested all of Anakin's hard-won wisdom. When peaceful negotiation failed and economic sanctions proved insufficient, he faced the complex task of protecting the innocent without becoming the very thing he had rejected. "Master," his first Padawan asked during one of their training sessions in the temple gardens, "what do we do when beings choose greed over compassion, even when shown a better way?" Anakin considered her question carefully, watching the fountain's gentle flow as he formulated his response. "We protect those they would harm, but we never stop hoping for their redemption. Sometimes the greatest service we can provide someone lost in darkness is to prevent them from causing more harm to others and themselves." The solution they developed became known throughout the galaxy as the Skywalker Doctrine. Rather than using force to compel compliance, Anakin worked with reformed Republic authorities to create economic and social structures that made exploitation unprofitable while offering former profiteers meaningful ways to contribute to galactic prosperity. Some Jedi questioned whether this approach was too lenient, arguing that certain beings truly were beyond redemption. During a particularly heated council session, Master Kolar challenged Anakin directly. "Your compassion is admirable, Master Skywalker, but what if some darkness cannot be transformed? What if mercy to the corrupt means suffering for the innocent?" Anakin's response became one of the foundational teachings of the new Jedi Order. "Then we love them anyway, while protecting those they might harm." Redemption isn't about guaranteeing outcomes. It's about never abandoning hope while maintaining the wisdom to act when action is necessary for the protection of life. The philosophical challenges extended beyond external threats. As Luke and Leia grew older, their unprecedented force sensitivity became apparent to everyone around them. Born of parents whose love had been purified by wisdom and trial, the twins possessed abilities that even Anakin found remarkable. Luke showed an intuitive understanding of the living force that surpassed many senior Jedi Masters, while Leia demonstrated a gift for seeing through deception and sensing the true nature of political situations that made her invaluable to her mother's diplomatic efforts. But raising such powerful children in the public eye presented unique difficulties. Anakin and Padme struggled to give them normal childhoods while honoring their extraordinary gifts. The weight of expectations from both the Jedi Order and the galactic community threatened to rob the children of the simple joys
of youth.
"They're not symbols or prophets," Padme said firmly during a Senate committee meeting that had suggested the twins should be raised as public figures. "They're children who deserve the chance to discover who they are without the burden of everyone else's expectations." Anakin faced his own internal struggles as his reputation grew throughout the galaxy. Beings from thousands of worlds sought his personal intervention in their conflicts, and the constant requests for his presence and guidance sometimes felt overwhelming. Learning to say no, to recognize the limits of his role, and the importance of empowering others to find their own solutions became one of his greatest ongoing challenges. The former slave who had once felt powerless now had to resist the temptation to try to fix every problem in the galaxy personally. "You cannot be everywhere at once," Obi-Wan reminded him during one of their evening walks through Coruscant's peaceful districts. "Your greatest gift to the galaxy is not solving every problem, but teaching others how to find the light within themselves." The temptation of influence presented subtle but persistent challenges. As the most respected Jedi in the galaxy, Anakin received constant requests to endorse political candidates, support various causes, and use his moral authority to advance specific agendas, even worthy ones. Each decision required careful consideration of whether his involvement would truly serve the greater good or simply substitute his judgment for the democratic process he had helped establish. The line between guidance and control proved surprisingly difficult to navigate, even with the best intentions. Some of Anakin's former Padawans struggled with his unconventional teaching methods. His emphasis on emotional honesty and the integration of personal relationships into Jedi life challenged traditions that had existed for millennia. A few young Jedi, lacking the life experience that had taught Anakin the difference between healthy love and destructive attachment, misinterpreted his teachings and formed possessive relationships that echoed his own early mistakes with Padme. These incidents forced Anakin to refine his approach constantly, learning to convey not just the principles of balanced love, but the hard-won wisdom about how such balance was achieved through trial, growth, and the willingness to let go when necessary. The most profound challenge came from within. Despite his transformation and the peace he had found, Anakin sometimes felt the weight of infinite responsibility pressing down upon him. The knowledge that his choices affected entire star systems created a pressure that even his deep connection to the Force could not entirely ease. In his darkest moments, usually during the deep hours of night when Coruscant slept around him, he would question whether he was truly worthy of the trust the galaxy had placed in him. The memory of how close he had come to falling to the dark side served as both a source of humility and a reminder of his own fallibility. During these times, it was often Padme's quiet presence that anchored him, her steady love reminding him that even the Chosen One was ultimately just a being doing his best to serve something greater than himself. The challenges of this golden age were different from those of war, requiring wisdom rather than strength, patience rather than action, and the recognition that even the most profound transformation could not eliminate all sources of conflict and suffering. But they also provided opportunities for growth that the dark times had never offered, teaching Anakin and those around him that true mastery was not a destination, but a daily choice to serve the light in whatever form each new challenge required. 5 years after Palpatine's defeat, a new threat emerged from the unknown regions that would test everything Anakin had learned about the true nature of the Force. Long-range Republic scouts detected massive ships approaching from beyond the galactic rim, vessels of a design unlike anything in recorded history. These were not the political manipulations of hidden Sith Lords or the economic schemes of corrupt corporations. An ancient Sith empire thought extinct for millennia had survived in the darkness between galaxies, growing in power and hatred, while the known galaxy had forgotten their existence entirely. Their leader called himself Darth Nihilus the Returned, claiming to be the heir of the legendary Sith Lord who had once devoured entire worlds through the Force. His fleet carried warriors who had never known anything but the pure dark side, beings raised from birth to channel hatred and destruction with terrifying efficiency. When the Republic's diplomatic envoys failed to return from their first contact mission, emergency sessions convened in both the Senate and the Jedi Temple. The initial response from many quarters was predictable. Senators called for immediate military mobilization, while some Jedi Masters suggested assembling the largest battle fleet in galactic history to meet this ancient threat. But Anakin proposed something that shocked even his closest allies. "Let me go to them," he said quietly during the emergency council session. Not as a general leading an army, but as a healer offering hope. "We've learned that darkness cannot be defeated by meeting it with more darkness. Perhaps these ancient Sith have simply forgotten that any other way of being is possible." Master Windu, now one of Anakin's strongest supporters, nevertheless felt compelled to voice concerns that echoed throughout the chamber. "Master Skywalker, these are not confused politicians or misguided separatists. These beings have been steeped in the dark side for centuries. They may be beyond any hope of redemption." Anakin's response carried the quiet confidence of someone who had faced his own darkness and emerged transformed. "Then they need healing more than anyone. And if they truly cannot be reached, at least we will have offered them the choice that was once offered to me." Yoda, ancient and wise, supported the unprecedented decision. "Strong in the Force, young Skywalker has become. Trust in his wisdom we must, but alone go he should not." The mission that assembled was unlike any in galactic history. Anakin would travel to the heart of the invasion fleet, accompanied only by Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Luke, and Leia, who had insisted on joining despite their youth, and a small team of diplomats, led by Padme herself. Rather than hiding their approach, Anakin opened himself completely to the Force, allowing his presence to shine across space like a beacon. As their ship approached the massive Sith fleet, every Force-sensitive being for light years could feel the unprecedented radiance of someone completely aligned with the light side of the Force. Darth Nihilus himself felt the disturbance and prepared to face what he assumed would be a traditional Jedi warrior. Instead, he encountered something that defied every expectation built over centuries of Sith training and indoctrination. The meeting took place aboard the Sith flagship, a vessel so steeped in dark side energy that most Jedi would have been overwhelmed simply by standing on its decks. But Anakin walked through its corridors with perfect serenity, his presence beginning to affect the very atmosphere around him. "You are the one they call the Chosen One," Nihilus said, his voice carrying the accumulated malice of ages. I have come to show this galaxy what true power looks like. Your light will be consumed, and your worlds will feed my hunger.
I haven't come to fight you, Anakin replied, his calm voice cutting through the oppressive darkness like sunlight through storm clouds. I've come to offer you what I was once offered in my darkest moment. A choice the ancient Sith Lord unleashed.
The full fury of his power, force lightning crackling through the air with enough energy to level city blocks. But instead of deflecting or fighting back, Anakin simply absorbed the attack, his connection to the Force transforming the dark energy into pure light that began spreading throughout the ship. What happened next had never been recorded in any Sith or Jedi archive. The pure light emanating from Anakin began dissolving the accumulated darkness that had saturated the vessel for centuries. Sith warriors who had never felt anything but hatred suddenly experienced moments of peace that brought them to their knees. "This is impossible!" Nihilus raged, pouring more power into his assault. "The dark side is eternal! It cannot be destroyed!" "You're right," Anakin said gently, continuing to transform every attack into healing light. "It cannot be destroyed because it was never real. Darkness is just the absence of light. When light returns, darkness simply fades away." Throughout the Sith fleet, an unprecedented transformation began. Warriors who had committed unspeakable atrocities over centuries found themselves remembering who they had been before their fall, to darkness. The artificial rage that had sustained them for so long began dissolving, leaving behind the profound exhaustion of beings who had been fighting their own nature for lifetimes. Luke and Leia, standing beside their father, added their
own unique gifts to the moment.
Luke's intuitive connection to the living Force helped individual Sith warriors remember their connection to life itself, while Leia's ability to see through deception showed them how they had been manipulated and used by leaders who cared nothing. For their well-being, even Darth Nihilus himself, faced with a light so pure and compassionate that it reminded him of who he had been before his corruption, began to feel cracks forming in the shell of hatred that had encased his spirit for so long. The confrontation that should have been the greatest battle in galactic history became instead the greatest moment of collective healing ever recorded, as Anakin's influence spread through the Force. Beings across both fleets felt the possibility of peace, touching their hearts for the first time in memory. In that moment, Anakin fully understood his destiny as the Chosen One. Balance did not mean equal amounts of light and dark in eternal conflict. Balance meant transforming darkness into light, healing the wounds that created Sith in the first place, and showing every being in the galaxy that redemption was always possible. The ancient Sith Empire, led by their humbled and redeemed former Dark Lord, chose to join the galactic community rather than destroy it, beginning the greatest expansion of peace and cooperation in recorded history. 20 years after that fateful choice in Palpatine's office, the galaxy had transformed beyond
recognition.
Anakin Skywalker, now known throughout the civilized world simply as the Chosen One, had become a living symbol of hope and redemption that inspired countless beings across thousands of star systems. The Jedi Order had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Rather than a monastic warrior sect isolated in their ivory tower, it had become a vast network of healers, teachers, and mediators whose temples served as centers of learning and community healing on hundreds of worlds. Anakin's revolutionary teaching methods, emphasizing emotional honesty, family bonds when appropriate, and service through love rather than mere duty, had created a generation of Jedi who were both immensely powerful and deeply connected to the beings they served. These new Jedi walked among the people as friends and neighbors rather than distant guardians. Luke Skywalker had grown into a gifted healer and explorer, using his remarkable Force abilities to discover new worlds and species that could be welcomed into the galactic community. His gentle nature and intuitive wisdom made him beloved throughout the Outer Rim, where his expeditions had opened peaceful contact with dozens of previously unknown civilizations. Unlike the military scouts of the Old Republic, Luke's missions were journeys of understanding and friendship. He would spend months with newly contacted species, learning their languages and customs, helping them understand their own Force traditions, and building bridges between their cultures and the greater galactic community. Leia Organa, Skywalker, had followed in her mother's footsteps, but with the added gift of Force sensitivity that made her the most effective mediator of her generation. Her combination of political acumen and ability to sense the true needs and fears of those she served had resolved conflicts that had seemed intractable for centuries. The Senate chamber had become a place of genuine collaboration rather than political theater. Leia's gift for seeing through deception and understanding the hidden motivations behind public positions had transformed diplomatic negotiations from exercises in manipulation into honest exchanges aimed at finding solutions that served everyone's highest good. The integration of clone veterans into galactic society had become one of the New Republic's greatest success stories. These men, who had been created as weapons, had discovered they possessed the same rights and potential as any other sentient beings, founding families and pursuing diverse careers across every sector of society. Rex, now a distinguished senator and advocate for veteran affairs, often spoke of the moment Anakin chose light over darkness as the day that gave all clones their true freedom. His legislative work had established support systems that helped former soldiers transition to civilian life while honoring their service and sacrifice. The galaxy's technology had evolved to work in harmony with the Force rather than against it. Medical devices enhanced by carefully cultivated Force crystals could cure diseases that had plagued certain species for millennia. Agricultural systems guided by Force-sensitive botanists had transformed barren worlds into garden paradises that fed billions. Environmental restoration projects had become a galaxy-wide priority. Planets poisoned by industrial exploitation during the corporate sector's heyday were being slowly healed through techniques that combined advanced science with Force-enhanced understanding of ecological balance. The fear and suspicion between different species that had fueled conflicts for thousands of years had begun dissolving under the influence of Anakin's example. His demonstration that even the darkest enemies could find redemption had inspired a galactic culture of understanding and acceptance that transcended traditional boundaries. Cultural exchange flourished as never before in galactic history. These great performance halls of Coruscant regularly featured collaborative works that brought together artists from dozens of worlds. Wookiee symphonies played alongside Twi'lek dance performances, while Hutt percussion ensembles provided rhythms for Rhodian wind instruments in celebrations of universal harmony. Educational systems throughout the galaxy had incorporated Force philosophy into their standard curricula, not to create more Jedi, but to help all beings understand their connection to the living energy that bound everything together. Children learned that they were part of something infinitely larger than themselves, while still honoring their individual gifts and cultural heritage. The economic transformation had created unprecedented prosperity that was distributed more equitably than ever before in recorded history. With resources no longer drained by warfare or exploitation, leaders inspired by Anakin's example prioritized the well-being of all citizens over the accumulation of personal power or wealth. Trade routes carried not just goods, but ideas, technologies, and cultural practices that enriched every world they touched. The hyperspace lanes had become arteries of cooperation rather than conquest, connecting distant civilizations in webs of mutual support and shared purpose. Former separatist worlds now collaborated enthusiastically with core world systems on massive projects that spanned entire sectors. The divisions that had once seemed insurmountable had dissolved under the recognition that every world brought unique gifts to the galactic community. Even former Imperial sympathizers had found meaningful ways to contribute to the new order. Their genuine desire for stability and efficient governance had been channeled into constructive projects that served peace rather than domination. Many had become effective administrators in the Reformed Republic, their organizational skills helping to manage the complex logistics of galactic cooperation. The Jedi temples established on frontier worlds had become much more than training, centers for Force-sensitive individuals. They served as universities, hospitals, meditation retreats, and community centers where beings of all species and beliefs could find wisdom, healing, and connection. Each temple was designed to honor local traditions while sharing universal principles of the Force, creating a network of learning that connected every corner of the galaxy. The architecture itself reflected this philosophy, blending native styles with Republic engineering in celebrations of unity and diversity. Religious and philosophical traditions that had been suppressed or forgotten during the war years experienced a remarkable revival. The Jedi Council had established ongoing dialogue with Force-sensitive traditions from across the galaxy, learning that the light side manifested differently in different cultures, but always served the same fundamental purpose of connecting all: life. Children who had grown up knowing only war and fear were now adults who took peace and cooperation for granted. They pursued careers in exploration, artistry, scientific research, and cultural preservation, their dreams unlimited by the constraints that had bound previous generations. This golden age represented not an end, but a beginning, as the galaxy continued to discover new possibilities for growth, connection, and service to the greater good that emerged when love truly conquered fear. As Anakin stood in the same office where he had once faced his greatest temptation, now transformed into a meditation chamber at the heart of a reformed government, he reflected on the extraordinary path that love had carved through his life and the lives of countless others across the galaxy. The chamber itself had been redesigned to honor the moment of choice that had changed everything. Where Palpatine's dark artifacts had once displayed his accumulated power, now grew a garden of plants from every world in the Republic, their diverse blooms creating a living symbol of unity in diversity. The massive windows looked out over a Coruscant, where the lights no longer blazed with the harsh urgency of war, but glowed with the gentle warmth of beings living in harmony. Anakin and Padme's love had become legendary throughout the galaxy, not merely for its passion, though that had remained strong through all their years together, but for its wisdom. They had learned to love each other without possessiveness, to support each other's growth without trying to control it, to face challenges together while maintaining their individual strengths and purposes. Their family gatherings had evolved into informal celebrations that brought together beings from across the galaxy. Former enemies, redeemed Sith, clone brothers, and representatives from hundreds of worlds would gather in the Skywalker home, sharing meals and stories that wove the diverse threads of galactic civilization into a tapestry of friendship and mutual respect. Luke and Leia, now adults with children of their own, had fulfilled their potential in ways that honored both their extraordinary gifts and their fundamental humanity. Their own children showed even greater Force sensitivity than their parents, but they grew up in a galaxy where such power was seen as a responsibility to serve rather than a source of superiority or isolation. these grandchildren of the Chosen. One became explorers, healers, artists and teachers, living examples of how force sensitivity could enhance any path in life rather than demanding separation from the broader community. They played with non-force sensitive children as equals, learned from teachers of every species, and understood from their earliest years that their gifts were meant to serve the greater good. Anakin's relationship with Obi-Wan had evolved into something that transcended every traditional category of human connection. More than master and apprentice, deeper than friendship, closer than brotherhood, their bond had become a perfect example of how two beings could support each other's growth while maintaining their individual identities and purposes. Their collaborative work had revolutionized Jedi training throughout the galaxy. The rigid hierarchies and emotional suppression of the old order had given way to teaching methods that honored the full spectrum of sentient experience while providing wisdom about how to transform emotion into wisdom and strength. Ahsoka, now a revered master in her own right, had built a network of schools for former slaves and other displaced beings, teaching them to find strength and purpose beyond their trauma. Her work had become a model for healing that extended far beyond force-sensitive individuals, showing how anyone could transform suffering into wisdom and service. Her regular visits to the Skywalker family were celebrations of the bond that had survived separation, misunderstanding, and the challenge of growth. She often said that watching Anakin choose the light had been the greatest gift of her life, a reminder that redemption was always possible no matter how far someone had fallen into darkness. The beings who had once been enemies now worked together on projects that spanned generations and star systems. Former separatist engineers collaborated with core world architects to design cities that honored local environments while serving the needs of diverse populations. Ex-Imperial officers worked alongside former rebels to build schools and hospitals that served beings regardless of their political history. The economic transformation had created opportunities for prosperity that reached every level of galactic society. The wealth that had once been concentrated in the hands of a few powerful families now flowed through systems designed to ensure that every being had access to education, healthcare, and meaningful work. Master Yoda had lived to celebrate his 900th birthday, spending his final years in joyful contemplation of how profoundly the galaxy had healed. His last recorded words became one of the foundational texts of the new Jedi philosophy. Right, young Skywalker was. Love the answer it has always been. Fear the enemy it always was. Choose love, and eternal peace follows. The Force itself seemed more accessible to all beings in this transformed galaxy. While not everyone could become a Jedi, most sentients could feel their connection to the living energy that surrounded and penetrated everything. This shared awareness had eliminated much of the fear and hatred that had previously driven galactic conflicts. Anakin continued learning and growing, even in his later years, discovering that his role as the Chosen One was not a destination, but a journey. Each day offered new opportunities to choose love over fear, understanding over judgment, hope over despair. His greatest teaching had become his simplest, that greatness lay not in perfection, but in the willingness to keep choosing light, even when darkness seemed easier. As he taught his students, his children, and his grandchildren, Anakin's central message never wavered. Every moment we face a choice. We can choose fear or love, anger or compassion, control or trust. The Chosen One is not someone who makes this choice once in a moment of crisis. The Chosen One is someone who chooses light in every moment, no matter how small or insignificant that moment might seem. When Anakin's time finally came, decades after that fateful choice in Palpatine's office, he faced death without fear or regret. Surrounded by the family and students he loved, he offered his final teaching with a smile that carried all the peace he had found through a lifetime of choosing love over fear. "Love never ends," he whispered, his voice carrying the same certainty that had guided his greatest choice. It just changes form and continues flowing through the force that connects us all. Trust in that love, and it will guide you through anything. In this timeline where love had conquered fear, where wisdom had guided power, and where the chosen one had finally come home to the light, the galaxy itself seemed to smile as one of its greatest servants rejoined the eternal force that had shaped his destiny and, through him, transformed the fate of countless worlds. As we reflect on this alternative timeline, we witness the profound truth that a single moment of choosing trust over fear can reshape the destiny of entire civilizations. In that office high above Coruscant, when Palpatine offered power through darkness and promised to save the one person Anakin loved more than life itself, the young Jedi made the hardest choice imaginable. He chose to let go. The ripple effect of that decision demonstrates something fundamental about the nature of existence itself. Anakin's choice to trust in the Force, rather than try to control it, created waves of transformation that touched every corner of the galaxy. His willingness to love without possessing, to hope without demanding guarantees, to serve without dominating, changed not just his own fate, but the very essence of galactic civilization. This timeline reveals that our darkest moments often contain our greatest opportunities for growth and transformation. When we feel most tempted to choose fear, anger, or the illusion of control, that is precisely when choosing love, trust, and wisdom can have the most profound impact on our lives and the lives of everyone around us. Anakin's journey reminds us that redemption is not about achieving perfection or erasing past mistakes. It is about making better choices one moment at a time, with the understanding that each choice creates new possibilities we could never have imagined. Even someone who has walked to the very edge of darkness can choose differently in the next breath, and that choice can change everything. The nature of true strength reveals itself throughout this alternative history. Real power does not come from the ability to dominate others or force outcomes to match our desires. It emerges from the courage to be vulnerable, to trust in something greater than our individual fears, to love even when we cannot guarantee that love will be returned or that those we love will be safe. While we may not face choices of galactic significance in our daily lives, we all encounter moments when we
must decide between fear and love, between trying to control outcomes and trusting in the natural flow of life.
Anakin's example shows us that choosing love, even when it feels risky, even when we cannot see how things will work out, creates possibilities that our fear-based thinking could never envision. The community impact of individual choices becomes clear as we see how Anakin's transformation affected everyone around him. Just as his decision to trust rather than control sent healing ripples throughout the galaxy, our own choices to love rather than fear, to forgive rather than hold grudges, to hope rather than despair, create ripples in our own communities that we may never fully understand. We may never know how a single act of kindness changes someone's entire trajectory, how a moment of forgiveness breaks a cycle of pain that has persisted for generations, or how choosing to believe the best about someone gives them the strength to become their highest self. But this timeline shows us that such transformations are not only possible, but inevitable when we consistently choose light over darkness. Perhaps most importantly, this alternative history demonstrates that growth and healing are ongoing processes.
rather than destinations we reach and then maintain effortlessly. Anakin did not make one good choice and then coast through life without further challenges.
He had to keep choosing love and wisdom every day, facing new tests and learning deeper lessons about what it means to serve something greater than his own desires. His greatness lay not in achieving some perfect state of enlightenment, but in his commitment to keep growing, keep learning, keep choosing light, even when darkness would have been easier. This reminds us that our own spiritual journey is not about reaching a point where we no longer face difficult choices, but about developing the wisdom and strength to make better choices consistently. The hope this timeline offers extends far, beyond the boundaries of this particular story. If someone who seemed destined to become the galaxy's greatest villain could choose differently and transform not just his own life, but an entire civilization, what possibilities exist for each
Of us?
What ripples of love and healing might spread from our own daily choices to trust, to hope, to serve something greater than our fears? The force that guided Anakin toward his ultimate destiny exists in our world as well, though we might call it by different names. Love, compassion, hope, wisdom, the deep knowing that comes from connecting with something greater than our individual anxieties and desires. These are not mystical concepts available only to fictional Jedi, but real aspects of human experience that become more accessible as we practice choosing them over their alternatives. When we choose to live from this place of connection and service, we become agents of healing and transformation in our own communities and families. We discover that the same principles that guided Anakin toward redemption can guide us toward becoming the people we were meant to be, the people our world needs us to become. The legacy of this alternative timeline is not just a beautiful story about what might have been, but a reminder of what is always possible when we have the courage to choose love over fear, wisdom over reaction, trust over the illusion of control. Every moment offers us the same choice that Anakin faced in that office, and every moment our choice matters more than we can possibly know. In a galaxy far, far away, one young man's decision to trust rather than control created a golden age that lasted for generations. In our own world, our own choices to love rather than fear, to serve rather than dominate, to hope rather than despair, create ripples of transformation that extend far beyond our ability to see or measure. The chosen one lives within each of us, waiting for the moment when we finally have the courage to choose light over darkness and discover what miracles become possible when love is allowed to guide our lives. As our journey through this alternative timeline draws to a gentle close, imagine the galaxy as it rests tonight in this peaceful reality. On Coruscant, the lights of the great city dim to a soft golden glow, no longer harsh with the urgency of war, but warm with the contentment of countless beings living in harmony with one another and the force that connects all life. In the meditation chamber that was once Palpatine's office, Anakin Skywalker sleeps peacefully beside his beloved Padme, their breathing synchronized after decades of shared love and mutual growth. The garden that grows where dark artifacts once displayed accumulated power releases gentle fragrances into the night air, each bloom representing a world that has found peace through their choice to trust rather than control. Their children and grandchildren rest safely in nearby chambers, their dreams filled not with visions of conflict and loss, but with possibilities for exploration, creativity, and service. Luke's latest expedition has discovered a civilization of artists whose force-sensitive paintings can heal emotional trauma. Leia's recent diplomatic triumph has brought 3 warring systems into a permanent alliance based on shared cultural exchange rather than military deterrence. On Tatooine, moisture farmers sleep soundly under the twin moons, no longer fearing raids from criminal syndicates or oppression from distant powers. The communities where former slaves and their children live as free citizens pulse gently with the rhythms of peaceful life, their dreams filled with hope rather than fear, possibility rather than resignation. In the unknown regions, former Sith, warriors rest without nightmares for the first time in centuries. They have learned that peace provides deeper rest than power ever could, that love heals more surely than hatred, that serving others brings greater satisfaction than dominating them. Their children, the first generation to grow up free from the artificial rage that sustained their ancestors, sleep with smiles on their faces. The ancient Jedi temples, scattered across hundreds of worlds, pulse gently with the breathing of countless beings who have found sanctuary in wisdom and service. Students from every species imaginable rest in dormitories where the differences between cultures are celebrated rather than feared, where force sensitivity is seen as a gift to be shared rather than a source of separation or superiority. Across the galaxy, children fall asleep to bedtime stories about the chosen one who chose love over fear, who showed that even the darkest heart could find its way back to light. These tales speak not of conquest and domination, but of healing, understanding, and the infinite possibilities that open when we choose to trust rather than control, to serve rather than rule. The Force itself seems to rest more easily in this timeline, flowing gently through all living beings like a warm breeze on a summer evening. The balance that was restored through one act of courage and wisdom continues to nurture life throughout the galaxy, creating new possibilities for growth and connection with each passing generation. The hyperspace lanes carry dreams as well as ships, hopes as well as cargo. Beings who once lived in isolation now know they are part of something infinitely larger and more beautiful than they had ever imagined. The loneliness that once drove so many to seek power over others has been replaced by the deep satisfaction of belonging to a community that spans star systems. In the deepest reaches of space, where new worlds wait to be discovered, explorers rest, knowing that tomorrow will bring opportunities to extend the galaxy's embrace to civilizations not yet
Contacted.
Their ships carry not weapons of conquest, but gifts of friendship, tools of healing, and the patient wisdom needed to build bridges between radically different forms of life. As sleep begins to claim you in your own peaceful place, let yourself drift into dreams of possibilities, both galactic and personal. What if, in your own life, you chose trust over fear? Tomorrow? What if you chose understanding over judgment, love over anger, hope over despair? What beautiful ripples might spread from your choices, touching lives in ways you might never even know. Let Anakin's choice inspire your own dreams of what could be when we choose light over darkness, when we trust in love's power to transform even the most challenging circumstances. In that peaceful galaxy far, far away, the chosen one found his destiny not through power, but through surrender, not through control, but through trust, not through fear, but through love. The stars themselves seem to pulse more gently in this timeline, as if the entire universe is breathing more easily. Distant nebulae glow with softer light, and solar winds carry whispers of hope between worlds. Even the cosmic forces that shape reality seem to respond to the transformation that began with one young man's decision to choose light when darkness would have been easier. As you join this peaceful galaxy in rest, know that you too are part of the force that connects all things, and that your choices tomorrow might create ripples of healing that stretch across eternity. The same courage that guided Anakin in his moment of ultimate testing lives within you, waiting for the moments when you will choose love over fear, wisdom over reaction, trust over the illusion of control. Sleep well, dear listener, and dream of the infinite possibilities that await when love conquers fear, when wisdom guides power, and when the chosen one in each of us finally comes home to the light. Let your dreams be filled with gardens growing where darkness once reigned, with bridges built where walls once divided, with hope flowering where despair once withered. In this timeline where a single choice changed everything, rest in the knowledge that your own choices matter more than you can possibly imagine, and that tomorrow offers new opportunities to choose the light that creates miracles in a galaxy far, far away, and in the precious world where you lay your head tonight. Thank you for joining me on this journey of hope and possibility. If this alternative timeline brought you peace, please share it with others who might need to remember that it is never too late to choose differently. Subscribe for more adventures through the infinite possibilities that love creates. And may the Force be with you always, in all ways, as you choose your own path toward the light.